just want to talk about really quickly the way that I use JPEGs and RAW files from the Fuji system. On a very personal scale, I think the JPEGs that the Fuji systems kick out are amazing, second to none, certainly far better than the JPEGs my Canon system used to kick out. And I think that there is a great benefit for people who are shooting high volume of images to at least try and shoot in JPEG and see how you get on. Now, of course, I'm not going to say to anybody that you have to shoot JPEG or you have to shoot RAW. It's entirely up to you guys what you do. Sometimes I'll shoot RAW. When I'm shooting weddings or I'm shooting on the street, I'll more than likely shoot JPEG just because of the fact that the camera will do a majority of the processing for me. Now, of course, if I'm shooting a portrait or something that needs a high level of post-production, then I would be probably shooting that in RAW. I typically don't shoot those types of images. I'm usually shooting weddings in a kind of documentary style or on the street, which is all candid. So it's a case of allowing the camera to do as much of the work for me as possible. So we have, I've just brought in two images into the Lightroom in front of me. I have a wedding image and I have a street photography image. And I'm just really going to show you how I would treat a JPEG and the extra work really that's needed to treat a RAW file to try and get it into a similar state. So the image you have in front of you, I'm just going to press the reset button so you can see that this is the image directly from the camera. This is a RAW file. Day trip into Cardiff a couple of weeks ago in fact, during the Rugby World Cup. Now for me this image was it's kind of the contrasting light on the guy's face at the front and obviously the rugby ball embedded in Cardiff Castle there, and it's an interesting scene. It's a picture I wanted to take. So this is the RAW file and this is the JPEG file. So immediately you can see that the JPEG file probably takes on much more of the attributes of an image that I want to see. It's certainly more of the image that I visualized when I was shooting it on the street taking this picture. It's obviously all about the light falling on the guy's face. So I'm shooting this with a classic chrome simulation, which I pretty much shoot all of my color images with. And I have in the camera I have my settings set to +2 on the shadows and -1 on the highlights, which means I like to have blocky blacks, I like to have deep shadows, and I like the camera to do a little bit of recovery in the highlights, but not too much. Now, if you compare this to the RAW file, there's a big difference, and of course, if you want to do a lot of work to this, then the RAW file is the thing to be using. So if I want to see these two images side by side, I can select both of them in the loop at the bottom there and just press N to go into survey mode, and you can see straight away the comparisons of the images. The JPEG itself, apart from perhaps a little bit of cropping, I'm absolutely fine with. I might just darken up the other characters on the left hand side. But it's done, it's done and dusted. Now, if I want to get the RAW file to be in the similar situation, I'll just pop back into grid view. I'll open up the RAW file into develop mode. The first thing I would do is come straight down to the camera calibration and choose classic chrome from the film simulations that we have there as an option. So I'll pop that in. Now, if I go back to the grid view, you can now see that Adobe's version of the classic chrome film simulation is pretty good actually. It's pretty close. That's the one on the right hand side as you look at it. The JPEG is still the one on the left hand side. I prefer the JPEG still, but we have to bear in mind that when we apply the film simulations in Adobe Lightroom, it's not taking on board any of the camera settings that I've put up in terms of the shadows, the highlights, noise reduction, etc., etc. And that's where the work comes on board in Lightroom in terms of adjusting that stuff. So let's go ahead and try and do that. I would pretty much come and do a tone curve of some kind, just a minimum one there. I'm going to bring the shadows down to bring it back. I might pop up the highlights very, very slightly there. If I was to crop it, I'm going to bring it in here, something like that, and bring that up there. Okay, maybe a bit of an extended crop. I'm going back to the JPEG now. I'm just going to put that similar crop in. Okay, just so we can see the comparisons. and back into the survey mode, and you know, they're pretty good, not too bad, but obviously there's extra steps involved there. The color ones I find are much quicker and much easier to replicate in Lightroom. Black and white not so much, and I do most of my work in black and white. So let's have a look at that next. So here's a wedding picture that I photographed a few months back, and you know, it's a nice typical wedding scene. Very happy couple, nice parents looking on, etc. Everybody's really happy. Now, for those of you who know my wedding work, you'll know that a majority of it, probably 70% or so of it, is black and white, and I shoot pretty much most of that as JPEG in the camera too, with a minor adjustments later. There's always some work that needs to be done. But the fact of the matter is that the camera system is still doing most of the work. So this is a RAW file, and I'll reset it just so you can see there's no adjustments being done. And actually, you know what, it's really nice. The RAW files are great. It's, you know, it's kind of a nice exposure. I like it. There's nice light falling on the bride and groom, and it's you know, it's a nice picture. Here is the JPEG straight out to the camera. So you know, this is great. This is using the black and white plus R filter, +2 in the shadows, -1 in the highlights. Exactly what I do for all of the images, color or black and white. Now, you know, this is done. This is done for me. I would probably, if I shot native monochrome in terms of not wanting any kind of split tones or slight sepias, then pretty much this is done. I might add a little vignette to it. The JPEG is happy. The RAW file needs some work doing to it. So let's just finish this JPEG. Let's just assume that this has come out of the camera, and my work that I have remaining on this is pretty simple. I'm going to come down to the split tone section. I'm going to go to the shadows. I'm going to add 30 here. I'm going to add 5 there. That adds my little tiny kind of split tone sepia warmth of the image, if you wish. That's the values that I add pretty much as a standard to most of them. I'm going to come down here. I'm going to add my post-crop vignette using this tool, just very slightly, and it's done. That picture's done. I don't need to do any work to it anymore. It doesn't mean that they don't all come, you know, they're not all going to come through and no work needs to be done. Sometimes I might do a little bit of dodging, sometimes do a little bit of burning, but that's done. That's it. You know, how long was that? 2 seconds, 5 seconds, maybe. The split tone stuff is actually done on an import preset, so that's even done as an automated import. Now the RAW file is slightly different. The RAW file, I'm going to have to work on this a little bit more. I'm going to do a little bit of white balance adjustment there on the dress. I'm going to reshape it very slightly. First thing I always do, even if I'm shooting black and white, believe it or not, is I will actually set the film simulation to classic chrome. And the reason for that is because I really like what it does to the shadows, and I really like what it does to the highlights. The black and white plus R film simulation, it's a little bit too insipid for me from Adobe's point of view. I like the one that that gets spat out of the camera, but from the Adobe point, I don't really quite like what it does to the shadows. So back to classic chrome, we'll add that punch basically to the image. Come up here. Now, of course, there's several ways, lots of ways to do black and whites in Lightroom, and you know, I'm not here to say which one is the best and which one is the worst. Very simply, you could just do a saturation, bring all the saturation down to -100 and take all of the color away. That's not the way I typically do it if I'm shooting in RAW and I'm kind of editing it. So I'll pop that back. The normal way that I will do it is to come down here, hit black and white, and I can adjust now using this blue channel. I can try and bring a little bit of detail down further into those blacks, quite like that. The red channel for the highlights as well. I'm going to try and drag that up a little bit, and we're good to go with that. That looks fine. I'll come down, I'll add my vignette around about there. I'm going to come up and add my split tone, which is here. We'll do exactly the same values, 30 and 5. And you know, it's pretty good. Happy with that. So if we select both of them and we go to the survey view, yeah, they're pretty good. It's not too far, not too much difference in them. I still prefer the JPEG, and primarily the reason I prefer the JPEG is because I've had to do very little to zero work on them. When you're shooting a wedding or you're shooting on the streets and you may have 250, 300 pictures to edit, I think it makes a big difference for me, at least, to look at the JPEG options, because I'm mostly using an EVF, unless I'm using my X Pro 1 or my X100, in which case I'm actually mostly using the EVF on those these days too. I can see in the viewfinder exactly what the image is going to look like, so there's very few occasions where I'm overexposing or underexposing, accidentally at least, and I can get the exposure pretty much bang on. Even the JPEGs themselves, you still have a good opportunity for exposure correction. So we're back to the JPEG here. It's the one I've just slightly edited, but I'm going to press reset just to take it right back to the JPEG as it came out of the camera. Okay, it's still a nice JPEG. It's just to show you the levels of exposure correction that you can do with a JPEG. So we're at 0 at the moment. Let's bring it all the way down to 4 stops. Okay, so there's 4 stops or so. So let's pop it all the way back up to the 0, and let's go up to the 4 stops over. Okay, so we're getting much, much brighter, of course. You can look at the tone curve here, the histogram I should say, to see where it's blowing it right out. But you can see there's actually quite a lot of range there. You've still got quite an option to bring things down, bring things up, even with the JPEG. One would hope you wouldn't need to use that much range, but you have the options. So there you have it. That's my take on JPEG versus RAW processing in Lightroom versus the Fuji X-Trans files. Neither way is right, neither way is wrong. It's entirely up to you how you want to do it. The reason why I've gone through that process is because I get a lot of questions and people are asking me, how do you process your weddings and how do you do this and how do you get black and whites, etc. And that's it, pretty much. Not a lot more to it. Any questions, obviously, please feel free to leave a comment on the blog post and I will reply as soon as I can.